Goedecke, a 36-year-old pediatric nurse practitioner, was on top of the world. She had it all: a perfect marriage with the love of her life, a gorgeous daughter, and an amazing start of a career. But the higher you are, the harder you fall. And little did Rebecca know that everything was about to come crashing down around her. Her picture-perfect life was very soon about to be shattered into a million pieces that she could never pick back up again. Everything she knew about her life was to be proved false. Her husband of 7 years, her marriage, and the life they lead would soon prove to be nothing more than a cruel joke. But before we dive into Rebecca Goedecke's nightmarish experience, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on our channel for more haunting but real-life stories.
Love finds us all, eventually.
For Rebecca, everything was coming up roses after all the struggles of nursing school, starting with her true love, with whom she wanted to spend the rest of her life, a beautiful baby girl, and her dream job, which she worked towards for years. Her life was nothing short of magical. But all that glitters is not gold.
The Florida life.
In her blog post, in which she describes her entire ordeal, Rebecca describes this time as nothing short of magical. She was happily married to the love of her life and had a gorgeous 3-year-old daughter. Her home was located in one of the nicer suburban neighbourhoods, which was right near Jacksonville Beach in Florida. Every day was a new adventure. She would have lunch by the ocean, walked hand in hand with her husband down the beach, and take her daughter swimming every day. Every sunrise brought a new day, filled with sunshine and happiness. It sounded too good to be true, right? That's because it isn't true.
Shocked to the core.
It was a normal Monday morning. Rebecca woke up and went through the motions of a daily life. She was on her way home from work, humming a tune to the radio, thoughtlessly. Just a couple of days earlier, her family had celebrated her daughter's 3rd birthday party in a traditional Hawaiian luau style. But nearing her house, she was very confused. There appeared to be a huge amount of stuff in her front yard. Being nearsighted and having forgotten her glasses back home, Rebecca sped up the car, and what she saw made her heart fill with dread. All around the yard, all of her belongings were scattered, as if someone had forcibly thrown everything out. It turned out she and her family had been evicted. She was told that she could no longer enter the house, and the locks had also been changed. This completely confused poor Rebecca, for she'd been paying all the bills and payments quite diligently.
Something wasn't adding up.
Rebecca was sure this was all just a huge misunderstanding, that this was not something that could happen to her of all people. She had a perfect life, the perfect house, the perfect daughter, and most of all, a perfect husband. For a short time, she entertained the possibility of this being an elaborate prank played on her by her husband. But what she found out changed everything she knew as the truth. She felt hopeless, lost, and most of all, confused. Because the one person she could trust in all of this mess was the one who created it. Yes, her Prince Charming wasn't who he seemed to be. In fact, nothing about him was even close to what Rebecca knew. She didn't understand why she'd been evicted when she'd been paying her share of the rent and bills. She had always prided herself on her strong sense of independence and responsibility. She wanted to be the perfect role model for her little girl. But little did she know that she had made the biggest mistake in her life. Not only had her husband not been paying his share of the utilities, but he was also pocketing whatever Rebecca gave her as her share. The landlord informed her that she was 3 months behind in her payments of the rent, despite regularly giving her share. Every time she had been entrusting her husband with the rent and utilities, he had been taking the money himself. The money wasn't the only thing that disappeared, though. The man of her dreams was nowhere to be found, as if he had vanished like a dream himself.
Solving the puzzle.
It took Rebecca Goedecke a while to calm down, and when she finally did calm down, she started putting it all together. Looking back, She could see how blind she had been to her husband's peculiar habits, his recent weight loss, to weird sleeping habits, and the mysterious errands he always claimed to have. All the trips he took that he never took his family along with. Being in love with him, she had turned a blind eye to all these things. It didn't help that she was also a busy working mum, juggling her working life and her 3-year-old daughter. The biggest red flag was that her husband never parked his car in the driveway, but rather he chose to park it further away in guest spaces. But by now it was too late to do anything with these realizations.
Skeletons in the closet.
In a fit of inspiration, Goedecke thought of checking their cars for clues, and soon she found the answers that horrified her to her soul. Scattered all around the car were dozens of empty cans and prescription drug bottles. Not only did she not know the man she'd spent 7 years of her life and had a child with, but she also did not know about his addiction. In the car that he drove their daughter around in, he had been hiding his unhealthy addictions. Not only was he endangering his health, but also their daughter's. But this wasn't the only thing that took the floor from right below Rebecca's feet. What she found hidden in the dashboard of the car was the worst of what had come. Within the things she found in the dashboard were dozens of unopened envelopes, birthday cards and unpaid bills. Where was all the money going, wondered Rebecca. It soon dawned on her that all of the money that she'd earned had been going to feed her husband's substance addiction. And like we said, this was just the tip of the iceberg.
Lies.
To this day, Rebecca can recall how devastating all those discoveries were. It was as if all the warmth of life was sucked out of her, and she has left a shell of what she once was. How could she ever been deceived so completely? How did she live with someone like this for 7 years and fail to see it all? She had given life her all. She worked towards her goals diligently, raised her daughter with the utmost care, and most of all, gave all her devotion to her husband. But the whole time her husband had been carefully building a web of lies around her. Not only had he lied to her about his addiction and the bills, but Rebecca would also soon discover this was a long-planned game with a much more sinister endgame.
Credit card fraud.
Her husband, who she once imagined growing up with, had stolen her identity and ruined all her credit. Throughout the span of their marriage, her husband had been opening bank accounts under her name and had taken out countless personal loans in her name. Rebecca, who once prided herself on her responsibility and sense, found out she was in deep water. Not only did she owe thousands to the bank, but there was one last blow coming her way. Money problems and drug addictions were the least of which her husband hid from Rebecca. They say we can never really know another person completely. How true it was for Rebecca, she never knew till that day.
A double life.
Rebecca had married her husband, thinking he was an upstanding US citizen who had served with the Marine Corps. But that was all a lie. His education, his job, and the past, all of it was a complete lie. For almost Rebecca had been living with a man who she did not even know one bit, with her life crumbling around her. The last blow was she found out that her husband had a daughter with another woman as well. Devastated and still looking for some sort of explanation to all this, Rebecca confronted her husband. But what did he do? He abandoned Rebecca and her daughter in the parking lot of a Target store. Now, not only had she been abandoned by her good-for-nothing liar of a husband, but she was also quite literally left with nothing to her name, with a 3-year-old to take care of and the night quickly approaching. Rebecca had no choice but to move into a cheap hotel. Never in her life had she thought that she'd have to take her precious bundle of joy to such a place. Destroyed and wrecked, she did not give in to the despair for a minute, all for the daughter she loved more than herself. With a limited amount of funds to her name and not even a clean set of clothing to change into, she took a trip to Walmart and got basic necessities for her and her daughter. Admitting defeat for the first time in her life, Rebecca gave in and called her parents, who lived in the state of Tennessee. She told them everything that had happened, of how she had been so cunningly deceived by the man she had given her heart to.
Strength of will.
But Rebecca Goedecke was not one to stay down. Through willpower alone, she stayed strong for her daughter. She never let her parents worry and solved all of her problems one by one. Through the strength of her will alone, she overcame everything life had thrown at her. For her daughter, for her parents, she kept herself positive and never let herself get bitter or fall into despair. Rebecca Goedecke filed for divorce from that deadbeat fraud, with whom she had wasted so much of her life with. Working as a single mum, pulling her life together, and she was going very well, but there was a huge part of her that was very lonely. Despite having such hardships, Rebecca soon opened up to the possibility of finding love once again.
The true happily ever after.
Eager to reconnect with her childhood friends, Rebecca soon fell back into her old friendships. To one such friend, she jokingly revealed her loneliness and asked if he had any hot single pals that he could introduce her to. As fate would have it, Rebecca was soon introduced to a soft-natured Stephen. Rebecca did not know how huge of a role that Stephen would play in her life. Stephen, with his gentle nature and a shared understanding as a single parent himself, walked through all the walls that Rebecca had put up. He slowly gained her trust through his transparent nature. He let Rebecca see all his credit accounts, up-to-date mortgage and secure bank account. Moreover, going above and beyond, a few months into the relationship, he gave Rebecca the keys to his house and told her that she could show up unannounced whenever she wanted. Rebecca wasn't looking to be saved, but Stephen did just that. He gave her what she needed and earned all her trust. Today, the both of them are married and own a beautiful house with a child on the way. When people ask her how she ever trusted again, after all that had happened to her, she simply replies, "In the end, love wins." Doesn't this just make you believe in the power of true love? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing content.